old man needs to like die already. Hey guys, I'm Bo Valentine. I use she, they pronouns, and welcome to my March wrap up. I read 7 books this month, and oh my god, we have to get right into it because I have so much to say about literally all of them. The first book I read was The Stars and the Blackness Between Them by Janata Petrus. This was a YA queer romance novel about two 16-year-olds, Mabel and Audrey, as they become friends and slowly fall in love. Except it was so much more than that. Audrey is from Trinidad and she is being sent to live with her father in America by her very religious mother who caught her with her girlfriend one night. There she meets Mabel, the daughter of her father's best friend. They very quickly form a very loving friendship, and Audrey is there for Mabel throughout the entire story while she is dealing with her new diagnosis as well as her impending doom, I guess. However, Audrey is also struggling with her new surroundings and as well as why she got sent away. The book has a lot of themes on family, spirituality, mortality, as well as racism, which I should have been expecting, but I wasn't expecting how the author put this so beautifully intertwined in a lesbian romance novel of all things. Mabel, as she is struggling with her illness, finds a book in one of her parents' libraries, I'm so sorry, and the book was by a man named Afua. Afua was unfairly incarcerated and sentenced to death at the age of 19. In his book, he talks about his story and how he ended up where he is, as well as how he has found peace and comfort within the stars and astrology. Mabel eventually starts to learn about astrology herself, and she also finds a feeling of comfort within it. First of all, Queenie, we love her. Queenie is Audrey's grandmother who also has her own spiritual practice that includes crystals and talking with their ancestors and feeling connected to the afterlife in that way. And I just loved her. I loved her guidance. I loved how much she cared about Audrey and how she tried to help her even though Queenie was still in Trinidad. The spirituality piece in this story was also just amazing. I mean, I'm a crystal bitch. I love astrology. I love things like that. So seeing it in this story and how they used it to uplift themselves basically was very like relatable, because I quite literally have crystals in my pocket as I'm speaking right now, so it's also something that's very important to me, which I think helped me relate a lot to the story. The romance was so beautiful and it was very like elegantly done, if that makes any sense at all. I really, truly, and utterly fell for these characters, and I was just sitting there like screaming, was so excited about every single piece of the story. My favorite part, however, was probably Mabel and Afua's relationship, even though in the beginning it is just through the book. There was something so heartbreaking yet so heartwarming about Afua and how Mabel used his book to guide her, to help her, to make her feel better, especially when she was dealing with something so awful, especially for a 16-year-old. And oh my god, the ending, I was at my old job and I was listening to it and I was doing my duties and I stopped dead in my tracks and was like, that's it, like that's it. And as I'm listening to it, like there's already tears forming, but I couldn't believe it. Like I knew that it was gonna end how it did, but the way that it was written just like hit me right in my heart, and I was crying, and then I was like, thank god I'm alone right now, because I really had to have a whole moment after I finished this book. Needless to say, it was a 5-star, and I think that everybody should pick it up and give it a try because it was amazing. The next book, however, was not so great, and I feel like I have to be really careful with what I say about it. It was Better Together by Christine Rico. This is Christine's second novel about two sisters who were separated when they were very young because of their parents' ugly divorce. Siri, who lives with her mom in New Jersey, was a ballerina up until she had a career-ending back injury, and now she is struggling to get back on her feet. Jamie, who lives with her dad in California, is an aspiring comic with severe stage anxiety. She had a really bad performance and it shattered her confidence, and now she is struggling to get back up on her feet. Their respective parents send them on a retreat to Colorado called Rediscover Yourself, where they are reunited. As they get reacquainted, they realize that their family life is kind of crap, and they come up with this whole Parent Trap style plan to get back at their parents and confront the problems that they've had, basically, except there's a little twist of magic involved. By the end of the retreat, they go on a hike together and they find a haunted, creepy kind of cabin thing, and of course they decide to go in and explore, and there they get glitter bombed. This glitter bomb essentially turns them into each other. So when you're looking at Siri, you actually see Jamie, and this apparently was supposed to help them like pull off this plan, except it was a mess. And I think that's a great segue into my thoughts on this book. I would like to start off with Siri's swearing. I think it was so unnecessary and so useless, and it took me out of the story a lot. And also, Timothée Chalamet was in this book. Like, what the fuck? I hated that part, especially because, I mean, everybody in this book is made up, so I just wish that he was a made-up celebrity, and it felt very wrong and weird, and I didn't like it at all. I actually also had a really big problem with the magic. First of all, a glitter bomb is ridiculous. I think that like some elements of this plot was just so stupid, and that was one of them, and it was a very pivotal part of the story. So I was just, it took me forever to get through it because of that. And plot-wise, towards the end of the book, you realize like that this magic that made this mirror effect, essentially, that turned them into each other, was useless. If you read it, you know why it was useless. It like just ruined it pretty much. I also have to mention the grandparent plot twist. If you read it, you know what I mean. I feel like I don't want to be too spoilery. I think that that was so poorly set up. Like, there should have been more in the beginning of the story to set up that plot twist. It felt like it was just thrown in there, had no reason to be in there. Didn't like it. However, there were a few things that I did like about this book. Example, Dawn. Dawn is Jamie's best friend in the story, and she also forms a romantic connection to Siri. I loved her. She was a very like grounding part of this story. Like, she was a character that we needed, especially because all of the other characters were just a wreck and annoying. I thought Siri was so annoying, but when she was with Dawn, all bets were off. I really enjoyed their romance. Maybe it's because I'm a little gay myself, or maybe it's because, no, I'm just gay. I did rate it a 2-star just because there were a couple of things that I liked, so I felt a little unfair giving it 1 star. The next book I read was Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Oh my god, this was a whole event. I listened to it on audiobook, which I really enjoyed. It's about a married couple, Nick and Amy, who are pretty much on the brink of divorce. One day, Nick comes home and finds Amy missing. And that is all I'm going to tell you about it. Because I went into this book knowing nothing. I knew nothing about the plot. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and I was getting myself into a lot, alright? This story was so good. Amy is a psycho, and I love her for it. Like, she slayed this entire story. It was so good. I really loved her character. I loved her anger. I loved her spite. I thought Nick was kind of boring sometimes. However, I did really like the way that his misogyny was written. I think it was very interesting to see how deep it truly went. The scenes with his father was just like really fucking something else. I was sitting there like, god damn, this old man needs to like die already, I swear to god. But it was very interesting to see how Nick struggled really hard to not be a misogynist, but he was still a misogynist, basically. And I really appreciated that. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, very enjoyable, fantastic. I want to watch the movie soon, so that'll be interesting. The next book I read was Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. I hope I'm saying that right. This is a collection of short stories that is essentially about the experience of living as a woman, except with really deep, dark, nasty, twisted elements along with it. It also had a shocking amount of queer rep in it, which I wasn't expecting there to be anything gay, but there was. So that was a really fun surprise. I really enjoyed that part. I think some of the stories were like okay, however, I did have a couple of favorites. Those were Mothers, Especially Heinous, and 8 Bites. Mothers was about a lesbian couple having a child, except one of the moms kind of, you know, dips. She leaves. She's not into it. And it leaves the other one with this baby who didn't really want to have a baby in the first place. It was sad. It was gay, it was everything. I really enjoyed the writing, especially in that story. I mean, the writing in all of them is fantastic, but I liked how the author went back and talked about the beginning of the relationship as well as motherhood. I just felt very connected to it. It was lovely and heartbreaking at times, which, you know, is always appreciated. Especially Heinous was probably my favorite out of all of them. It is a reimagining of SVU episodes, and it was disgusting. It was so creepy, it was so unexpected, and I was eating it up. I was sitting there like, what the fuck am I reading? It was so good. My favorite part of that one was definitely the women with bells up for eyes. It was so interesting to see how the author like wrote out the haunting, as well as it was written in like passages pretty much. So like, you know, the little description that like Netflix or something gives for like an episode or a movie or something, that's kind of how it was written, and I loved it. It was so interesting to read a story in a different format like that. And the last one that I really liked was 8 Bites. This one is about a woman who gets bariatric surgery and she struggles with mommy issues and obviously self-image, and the end of it was gross, which I really enjoyed. I did rate it a 3 stars, which I guess is kind of low, but I think that's because some of the other stories just weren't my cup of tea, but those 3 definitely were, and I loved them, so 3 out of 5. The next book that I read was actually on audiobook, and it was The Queen's Gambit by Walter Tevis. Where do I start? This was a fiction novel about a woman named Beth who grew up in an orphanage. In the orphanage, she becomes friends with the janitor, and he teaches her all about how to play chess. Also in this orphanage, they give the kids tranquilizers to help them fall asleep, and Beth learns that she can use that to her advantage to get inebriated, which leads to a lifelong substance abuse issue. As she grows up, she gets adopted and she starts competitively playing chess at some local competitions. Slowly but surely, she becomes world famous, especially because of her age, as well as the fact that she is a woman in apparently what is a man's field. The story then goes through her career and the rest of her life, and eventually she ends up in the World Championships, where she plays against the #1 best chess player in the world. And I have thoughts. I need to start off right away with the sexual part of this story. It felt weird. Like, Walter, your dick is showing, please put it away. I did not care for it. I did not like the way that it was written. It felt strange to listen to, especially. Can we also just take a second to actually acknowledge the casual assault that was just thrown in there in the beginning of the book? There was no reason for it. It had nothing to do with the plot. Like, it was just put in there, and I was very grossed out at the fact that a grown man just randomly put a child being sexually assaulted in the story for no reason. It was just there. Gave me the ick, all right? I also think there were a couple of things in there that were not taken seriously enough or just weren't done well. Substance abuse is one of them. I feel like there wasn't enough emphasis on how much that really controlled her life, maybe towards the end, but it still, I felt like, wasn't given the weight that it needed. Along with that, the theme of feminism was absolute garbage. It went as far as, I'm a woman and that shouldn't matter, but that was it. That was the end of the dialogue. There was no conversation between the fact that she was a woman playing against a bunch of men, other than like, holy shit, you're a woman and you're good at this? Like, come on. Come on. I was so disappointed. I ended up giving it a 2 stars because I loved the actual idea. The concept of this story was really fun. It just wasn't executed very well. Moving on, I also listened to Stamped by Jason Reynolds. This is a nonfiction novel where Jason Reynolds talks us through the very beginning of racism, its origins, the fight for freedom from the very beginning all the way until now, as well as the concept of anti-racism. I really enjoyed the audiobook. It's read by Jason Reynolds himself, and his writing style is just so beautiful. It's so ingrained in my brain. I'm like, this man knows words, okay? He knows. There was also a little bit of humor that was in there, which I really enjoyed because it was such a heavy topic and it shockingly made me giggle a couple of times. This book was also really easy to digest and it really opened my eyes to a lot of different things, so I would definitely give it a 5 stars. It was so good and I'm so happy that I finally got to this book because I've been wanting to read it for quite a while. And the last book I read was Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. We love some twinks falling in love. This volume is how Nick and Charlie meet, become friends, and the very start of what turns into a relationship. I had no idea that there was so little of the story within this first volume, and now I'm sitting here like, why don't I have all of them? I need some money. I would love to go get these books and read them right now. I thought it was very fun. It was very easy. It was like a cozy, comforting read. I feel like this is something that I would go to if I was sad and just needed some little upbeat shit. It was adorable. We love Alice Oseman. We love Nick and Charlie. It was fantastic. I gave it a 4 stars. And those were all of the books that I read in March. If you enjoyed, feel free to comment, like, subscribe, you know, do all the fun things. I also have my Goodreads and Twitter in the links below if you would like to go check those out. I am Bo Valentine and I will see you again. Bye!